The fact of we getting hacked someday, quote unquote, is a myth. We've been hacked already.
How does keeping a strong or a weak password affect the chances of being prone to hacking?
Do you think that app is 100% free? If it is, so how is it making money being a free component of the internet?
Greetings of the day. This is your friend Sanya, and with this new episode of our interview series, we are so happy to have the one and only Sudipt Ghatak with us again in our podcast, Learnings of Life of an 18-year-old. For those of you who haven't yet heard our conversation, don't forget to check out the episode Exploring New Dimensions with Sudipt, in which we talked about life, career, hobbies, and most importantly, spirituality. This episode is for all those tech enthusiasts who love to hear about cybersecurity and cybercrime. And what's better than hearing it from a cybersecurity expert himself? Give it up for Mr. Sudipt Ghatak. Hello, sir. How do you feel coming back to our podcast?
Hey, Sanya. First and foremost, I think we are practically friends, and let's not have formality in the form of sir and Mr. as initials, okay? I'm fine with you addressing me as Sudipt. And yes, it's always exciting for me to be part of your podcasts. Not that I would be heard by so many people, of course, that's one of the exciting factors for sure. But I get those intellect vibes from you that help me motivate myself to learn more. So thank you once again for inviting me.
Oh my God. Thank you so much, sir, for such flattering words. I guess it's the other way around. We get motivated and inspired every time we listen to you. But again, keeping all of these aside, I feel like there are still a few in the audience who have this doubt in their mind, as in how are you associated with internet, its dark side, and cybersecurity?
So in the role of an IT consultant, me along with my team on a day-to-day basis is responsible to ensure customer success primarily. We would assess and provide technical solutions based on periodic reviews and cover like cost benefit analysis to help customers identify opportunities to reduce their cost, or maybe use their infrastructure more efficiently. During these regular exercises, we never forget to analyze the most critical part, that is the security aspects of their network. So this is where the cybersecurity role comes into picture. We detect their vulnerabilities and suggest our clients with methods to stay safe and compliant for their own data.
Wow, that's an actually very interesting job role. But again, easy to say but quite difficult to do. Well, before we start talking in technical terms, let's break this down from the basic level. Who are hackers?
Who are hackers? I don't have a ready-made answer from the dictionary, but I would say hackers are like ethical digital detectives who investigate and protect the internet or the network that they are responsible for. Like they identify vulnerabilities and fix them to keep the internet or their said network safe. I don't know. That's my definition though, but yeah, it's close enough to what it could be.
Yeah, I guess that's an actually close enough definition. Just a note for the audience who may be a bit surprised now, that from when did hackers start protecting the network? Just keep listening till the end, and I'm sure at the end of this episode you will get an answer to this doubt. Well, moving ahead. So, are there any specific methods by which they break into someone's system? As in, are there any particular steps or stages that hackers follow to hack a system?
Sanya, so like any attack, a hacking attempt is very close to the steps of a real-time army attack. Okay, an individual or a group of individuals form a team to perform a reconnaissance and gather as much as information as possible the more the better. So, starting right from employee details to the extent of knowing the range of maybe external, internal IP addresses or the applications that are being used for their internal productivity. This might require a person to even pick up like the used printer papers from the dustbins, for those might have certain substantial information. After collecting this data, it's put into a ready-made tool that helps in drawing a visual diagram. Earlier, this was done manually, but now since we have so many tools handy, that makes the data look pretty and more user-friendly within a click of buttons, of course. These tools help in joining the dots around all the pieces of information collected, like who's who in the system and their respective privileges, or the devices, the servers, etc. The next phase is scanning, where the use of the data from the recon phase to identify available ports or perhaps the vulnerabilities around the applications being used, or maybe a target person to gain their access and elevate the privileges. So once we have the scanned result and all set to attack, now comes the actual step, and that step is gaining access. So we use something called a payload. A payload is nothing but a script or an executable file that's masqueraded as a common looking file format, or encapsulate within another file, or maybe executed through some employee using a phishing technique, or embed it into some running services and then somehow get it executed. And then eventually the next phase comes into place, where it's about maintaining the access, where you need to ensure that the access doesn't get disrupted by any application.
That's quite some planning. But before we go ahead with further steps, I always had this question on my mind, why do they even hack? I mean, it sounds so funny to ask you this, but can't help it. So yeah, what are the intentions of the hackers behind them breaking into someone's system?
Again, it boils down to your intention to hack, and accordingly you design that payload to act for you. The file might encrypt your data and you won't be able to access your data. This is typically a ransomware attack, okay, where the hackers demand for a ransom amount to share the key for you to decrypt your data back. The intention could also simply be to destroy the data. So perhaps the hacker may not need a connection oriented approach. The moment the payload executes, it does the job of destroying the data. There could be other intentions of a hacker, like he or she would want a real-time access of a device so they can remotely access the system and do whatever is needed, copy the data, or maybe place another file to it, for the next chain of attack that he or she wants to execute to impact a larger footprint. In these cases, the payload is programmed to execute a remote reverse session to a server that is under the hacker's control. Overall, the final step comes to clearing the tracks. So, if you're a hacker, you wouldn't want to leave traces behind for the forensic experts. So a hacker would potentially try that. Hence, it's important for a cybersecurity expert to be aware of all the unethical methods used to clear the logs and traces. It's like to catch a thief, you have to think like one, right?
Wow, those are some interesting answers to my silly question. Well, now I feel like I'm bombarding you with some dumb questions out there. But one small question in my mind with respect to this is, how does keeping a strong or a weak password affect the chances of being prone to hacking?
Definitely, I think you've got the right questions in place already, or should I say the suggestions. This is one of those basic steps that people apparently ignore. keeping their password strong. A long alphanumeric password containing few special characters will result into a brute force or maybe a dictionary attack to time out, or maybe the hacker himself or herself gets bored out of waiting for the result and leaves your account aside, moving on to someone else.
That adds so much sense to my question. So, for everyone out there who are listening to us, it's time to keep strong alphanumeric passwords. I repeat, strong alphanumeric passwords. But yeah, coming back to hackers, can hackers be really classified into the types based on their domain of work or based on their intentions?
I think the types and categories of hackers are growing every day. But in a nutshell, there are basically 3 to 4 types, and every new category is either a subset or very close enough with a little bit of difference. So, the first one that you would hear is our white hat hackers, which is like the security guys. These guys they are the good hackers, okay, in short. So they would work for an organization, they would take permission from the organization, and hack their systems to let them know about the vulnerabilities or the loopholes they have. And this process is called penetration testing. Sometimes some of these white hackers are not part of any organization. They might be like freelancers working by their own, but they don't mind reaching out to any organization saying, hey, you know what, I was just doing a recon. Looks like I came across some of the loopholes in your system. So obviously you get to know their intentions are pure and there's no harm. So they are like the real ethical hackers. The next category is totally opposite, the black hat hackers, and they have like again similar potential to hack into anything, just that they are not ethical. They are the bad guys in the internet world that people look out for. Then there are script kiddies, which is the most common hackers, because these are people who know nothing, but they would just get the scripts from the internet and just run those scripts to gain access. So they are like the level 1 hackers. And then there are like gray hat hackers, which is primarily neither a white hat nor a black hat. So quite possibly a black hat could be a gray hat hacker, helping the white hat people knowing the details of somebody from the dark web, and or the opposite. This guy might be a white hat hacker in the daytime and would turn into a black hat hacker. So these guys are considered as gray hat hackers. So these are like 3 to 4 groups, which or categories that are primary you'll come across. You have like blue hat, red hat. These are like red teams and blue teams. So we'll as we move forward with this podcast, I might be able to explain that how this is more than being a category of hacker. This is more like a job role.
Okay, I guess that's more than enough for now. A silly question on the way, but some of us have read in our textbooks that hackers are actually people who ethically break into the system, whereas there are some people called crackers who do it in an unethical way. Keeping aside this theory, do you really think practically that there is any difference between hackers and crackers?
Yeah, I think these are primarily for those linguistic researchers who spend more time on an English dictionary trying to define technology for the dummies. A hacker, on the other hand, doesn't care how he or she is being referred to. Yes, I won't deny, I myself heard this on Ankit Fadia's seminar like 20 years back. Like I said, there are terminologies growing each day. Besides, the categories have gone way beyond just a cracker and a hacker. That is, somebody who's a bad guy or a good guy. Now, the categories have increased in terms of their intentions as well as their abilities, if that answers the question.
Yeah, so technically saying, there's not much difference apart from the linguistic approach to it, right? Okay, now that we have discussed so much about hackers, their motives and their types, there are quite a few questions from an 18-year-old's perspective which I would like to ask you. Few days back, I was watching a Bollywood movie named Baby, in which the character Shukla ji, played by Anupam Kher, had a laptop and probably some jammers, with which he stopped the flow of electricity through some wires, letting India's commandos cross a certain border. Do you really think such scenarios can take place in real life too, or they're just possible in films?
Yep, this is a subset of DDoS attack, which is distributed denial of services. In this particular example that you mentioned, he perhaps was trying the transmission of radio signals that disrupt communications by decreasing the signal to noise ratio. The intent of a hacker in a DDoS attack is to make a machine or a network resource unavailable, which in itself is literally brutal, right? You're dependent on a device and it's not responding can cause a great loss to an organization or a business person. To give you an example, last year an American hacker, his alias is P4X, P numerical 4X, took down North Korea's internet and continued to disrupt it for like weeks. This is again the best example of the intentions of hacking we were talking about a while back. No ransomware, no data copy, nothing, but purely destroy a network, make it unusable, and globally putting a question mark on North Korea's cyber experts. So in this example, it was typically showcasing what a DDoS attack can do, but mostly a DDoS attack is done when somebody plans for a man-in-the-middle attack, and again another method of hacking. In layman theory, suppose there is a guard standing on the gate and you get him busy while talking to him, taking his attention away, while I impersonate him as a guard and take all the incoming requests and act or deny per my plan. That's usually why a DDoS attack is initially planned, to keep one resource busy and bring in another device of your own, impersonating as the same device and taking or denying the requests. But then DDoS can be of great use when it comes to the wars that are going on. Russia-Ukraine war is a great example where too many DDoS attacks were considered to take down internet, take down their services, take down their telephonic network, and so on. So yeah, the one that you brought up is again a good example or a good reference point for common people to understand. Thank you for bringing it up.
I don't know why you're thanking me, but thanks to you for explaining us that so well. This brings me to my next question, that often people make us download some unknown apps and applications in our phones, right? Do you think hacking and leakage of a person's personal activity possible through these applications?
Oh yes, certainly. Wow, Sanya, I think you should rather be on the other side of the table explaining everyone, considering English isn't my first language and communication is definitely not my forte. I just know my job well, and I'm glad that the IT industry is about actioning the technical items over blabbering sugar-coated words. Something that's getting a little usual these days. Alright, let's not go there. Well, I think I kind of answered this earlier while we were discussing the phases of hacking, but it's good to reiterate the most common methods of attacks, where hacker will need a client application to run on your machine for his server to communicate under the radar. It's like a two-tier architecture that we follow. You need a client that should run on your victim's machine, and there is a server, which could be your laptop or maybe a different server, that potentially would be listening to what the client has to say. And what is a client? It's the script that you have asked to perform the tasks, right? So you never know what that file that you're trying to download has in for you. So never ever download anything that you aren't sure of. If you're not sure of the source, if you're not sure of the person. Hacking is when you give the hacker the access. So be a little cautious while you download anything from the internet. I love your questions, Anya. You have the right set of questions for your audience to be aware of, at least on the security part.
Once again, thank you for complimenting my questions. Tell me if I'm going wrong, but a lot of our day-to-day applications like Google, YouTube, LinkedIn, everything has our voice permission, and they recommend us our content based on our search patterns and our conversation that we have with others. Even though we know that this is for our benefit, but do you think that applications like these are a threat to us?
Absolutely. Once again, you're bang on with your apprehensions, and I'm glad you're thinking through it. The ability of the phones and applications getting smarter and suggesting options that interest you personally is possible only because of the data these apps pull from us on a regular basis. We are being tracked every minute, starting from our voice calls to our locations, everything. You'd be surprised. Your mic is constantly listening even when you think it's not in use. You try chatting or talking to someone about a product, and within hours it would start reflecting or showing up in your Amazon or Flipkart advertisements. Google and Facebook both had to face judicial consequences for collecting data we are all aware of. But does that stop there? You install an interesting app that would force you to share permissions. Do you even read the terms and conditions before installing? I mean, I don't. I'm not sure if somebody has enough time. Do you think that app is 100% free? If it is, so how is it making money being a free component of the internet? Well, you pay a price for everything that you use on the internet. Certainly nothing comes for free. The larger your footprint is available on the internet, the easier it gets for anyone to hack you. One reason why you wouldn't find me on Instagram, Facebook, and other social media, except of course I'm on LinkedIn, for it's professional. And considering all these, I am actually part of a new generation operating system community. It's called Cubes OS. For now, I think it's meant for computer literate or geeks at this point, but my reason to be involved with them is I appreciate their initiative towards creating security oriented operating systems, and certainly I take pride in performing UAT, which is user acceptance testing, for them at no cost, considering my intention is to make every end user secure on this internet. Time for advertisement. Commercial time. Use Cubes OS and be secured. Thank you. Just kidding.
That was so insightful. Now that things are getting quite interesting, let me ask you. We all know that with the formation of Niti Aayog and the initiative of Digital India by the Government of India, it is true that through this a lot of corruption is predicted to be avoided. But don't you think that this is making people more prone to cybercrime and their data getting breached and misused?
Whether or not the government directly is accessing your data and keeping a check is a question that's out of my scope to answer. But yeah, if it's on the internet and it's accessible to you and few others you've given access to, it could be accessed by the wrong people as well. Let me tell you something, Sanya. The fact of we getting hacked someday, quote unquote, is a myth. We've been hacked already, and our data is readily available for sale in the dark web. Having said that, with technology growing every day, we don't have any other option but initiate a digital interface for everything that can be automated. So you literally can't avoid the crucial role of internet or technology that will play an important role going forward.
Do you mind elaborating a bit on dark web?
I think the definition that's floating across the internet, explained by YouTubers and bloggers, isn't 100% accurate to me. Most of them explaining only the demonic side of it, which I don't disagree. But let's consider the other side of dark web too. I mean, of course, there could be red rooms, professional hitmen available, drug dealing going on, but is that what dark web is all about? I mean, can't it be used for legitimate, secure communications? Of course, yes. The method to access dark web is pretty much available everywhere, so I won't explain it much. But what concerns me is the explanation of dark web available to common internet users. Pretty intimidating. Dark web is an existing network, and you can call it a parallel universe to our internet, but typically larger in size. Just that we don't use the route to get into that network by default. We are limited to the internet with default routes to reach the legitimate websites, and those are part of what we know triple W, World Wide Web. If you notice, every website starts with www. So that's the default network we are all part of. And this network can be said to be a subset of the internet universe, or can be considered to be an upper layer that's available to common people. Whatever helps you understand it, basically. Association of wrong activities around dark web is pretty obvious, for it doesn't get monitored by the well-known data sniffing websites like Facebook, Google, etc. And of course, for the anonymity it provides. But back to its positive potential, I'd say with the increase of Google, Facebook's intervention into our personal data, it'll eventually force people to either turn off internet, which isn't feasible to me. The second option is use dark web for communications. You can talk to your friends and family without having a second thought of being heard all the time, or of being sniffed all the time, if I use the right term. Let's quickly also address how do we access dark web. We use a Tor client or a Tor browser. Tor is the onion routing or onion router that helps us get connected to that segment of IP ranges which is off the triple W network. And if you have the dark web IP addresses to visit, like your destinations, the domain names, in other words, you simply get through to those web pages or sites that exist there, like we do it in our regular internet. But a warning for new users, newbies, you need to be very well prepared before you simply download a Tor browser and get curious about dark web. Remember, you are entering an unknown territory. They can see you.
Wow, wow, wow. Nothing better than summing up our conversation on cybersecurity with the phrase, they can see you. Now that we have reached the end of this episode, let's talk about how to be safe amidst all this.
So if the users prioritize some attentive measures over their laziness, a lot can get secured on its own. Allow access to components only when you need it. Don't leave your browsers logged in with your account all the time. Clear caches regularly. Change passwords regularly. Don't just go around giving access to any site or application that authenticates using your email accounts. Update your applications and system periodically. I would say in timely fashion. Every time it pops up with an update, go for it. Don't delay it. These updates have serious fixes to some serious bugs and vulnerabilities. These are very basic and the first few steps that one should follow. For any further question, I'm always available. You can reach out to Sanya or can reach out to me over LinkedIn if I can be of any help at all. And most importantly, thank you, Sanya, for this wonderful time. We had always a pleasure being on your podcast, like I mentioned in the beginning as well. Hoping to see you soon. Thank you.
Heartiest thanks to you, Mr. Sudipt. I feel highly honored and privileged to have a conversation with you, and yes, hoping to see you soon. That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this captivating conversation. For listening to more such interesting conversations, stay tuned with Learnings of Life of an 18-year-old podcast.